Hey guys, how's it going? Clayton Motos here, and welcome to episode 1 in my bucket bike series. Well, there's a towel on it, and that kind of sucks. Hey guys, how's it going? Clayton Motos here, and welcome to the first video in my bucket bike series. And that is a 2009 YZ450F that I bought completely in pieces on Craigslist in Louisiana, and we're going to take that and turn it into this bike that I'm conveniently showing you on the screen, which is the 2008 YZ450F that I just finished. And the heart of every dirt bike is the motor, and so that's where we have to start today, and I have a motor. Well, somewhere in here. This is the bottom end of the 2009. As you can tell, it's sat outside for an extended period of time. But nothing a little bit of ultrasonic cleaner can't deal with. We've got a couple interesting, let me pull this up into the light. A couple interesting key features of this motor that are really awesome. So we've got the epoxy special here on this case half, which is going to be really fun to get off. And then if you notice over here, we have a bent shift shaft where it is, at a 30-degree angle, which is not stock. This is not where I'm starting right now, though. We are actually starting with the top end, which is also in a bucket, hence bucket bike. Okay, so the first step that we're going to do is, organization. Organization is key, and as you can tell, not very organized. How'd you like that flip? That was pretty cool, yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this really nice big 8-foot table where I can organize everything, and some of it's covered with tools. But for the most part right now, just with the top end, it'll be really easy to just lay everything out and just figure out what we have and what we don't have.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's that magnificent rusty piece in the corner?
This?
Yes.
Well, it used to be a wrist pin, but now it's gonna hang on my ceiling. Welcome to the vent of shame. I've got a lot of little trinkets here, and then there's my piston collection. This is the piston off of the 09. If anybody's interested, everything on the ceiling has a story. So if you care at all, put it in the comments. So this is everything that was in that bucket. And what I'm going to be doing today is basically just diagnosing everything because I don't have any parts right now because shipping times are terrible. So I'm just going to be going through talking about things that I check for and things that you should check for in a really old engine that's sat forever, or your brand new motorcycle that you just want to know how everything's going in there. We're going to get started with the cover here, and then the two camshafts and their caps, and then move our way to the head and then the cylinder. So let's get started. So this is just the cover that goes on top of the engine, and basically all you want to do is check for scratches, if the threads are stripped out on the bolts, which these ones here look really good. They could use a little bit of cleaning, but that's about it, and everything on this bike needs cleaning. Then, of course, the gasket is always a really important part to check. You just want to go through and make sure there aren't any really bad tears or nicks. This one's got a little one right here. I don't know if you can see that. See that little fuzzy sticking off the end right there? So just be mindful of that. That's not a big deal. I'm not going to go out and order a new gasket. So this part passes. It's going to need some cleaning. There is a guide rail right here. It's really important that that's still intact because if the chain does any kind of slapping, it can break this cover, and that's expensive. And these are like $4. So, and of course where the hose connects here, just make sure none of that's broken. It all looks really good. Not a lot of hours on this machine. So these are the camshafts and the cam caps and the bolts and everything in there. There's just a few things you need to check for. You can go through, the manual has certain tolerances for like roundness and things like that. It takes too long. I don't have that kind of precise measuring equipment, and so visual inspections are really all you need. So let's get started with the intake side. Okay, so this is the entirety of what makes up the intake, camshaft assembly anyways. We start with this cover here that sits on top, just like that. It has a guide pin, which is this. We'll start with the guide pin then. You just want to make sure it's not cracked or chipped or broken or malformed in any way. Yeah, that's a good one too. You want to inspect the dowel pins on the cam cap. It's nice if they move freely, but they don't have to because usually they're kind of stuck in there, and then you want to check the journals here, and I'll give you a little shot of that. You just want to look, yeah, they do. You just want to look and make sure they aren't scraped or scuffed. These are the bolts. There's 6 of them. Nothing really special here. Just make sure the threads aren't completely stripped out. That's all I can say about that. And then we've got the camshaft. Basically, you want to just check for how the bearing spins. You don't want there to be any noise. Want it to spin freely, no binding, no scraping. And then when you get everything aligned, you know, the pins here, you want to pretend as if these were in the place where they're supposed to be. You want to make sure the bearing hasn't spun at all, which is where the bearing pressed onto the camshaft actually moves, and then these teeth move away from where they're supposed to be, which causes nothing to work correctly in the motorcycle. And then you want to check for the teeth, wear marks there. This one looks really good. I don't see any kind of problems with it. So we're going to move on. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the exhaust can. And it's going to be a lot of the same things, but there's one major difference. We're just going to go ahead and inspect everything. This is good. It's not broken or chipped in any way, and it's flat. It doesn't wiggle when I push it down on the table at all. So this is good. And then I forgot to mention in the last one, you want to check the threads down inside of here for any kind of wear. This one's good. Nobody over-tightened the bolts and stripped it out. Again, you just want to check the polishing on the journals and make sure everything's good there. This one is. Bolts, more of the same from last time. And again, the camshaft. Make sure this spins. No weird noises. You want to check, I didn't mention this last time, you want to check right here for any kind of scarring, which you can see a little bit right there, but I can't feel it with my fingertip, or my fingernail, so no concerns there. And then this has a mechanical decompression system, and so when I pull this lever, this ball should go down, which it does. So everything in here is good to go. Okay, so this is the head, which of course sits on top of the cylinder and the piston and holds the valves and the spark plug and a lot of the other important parts of the motor. There's a couple different pieces to this. It's one of the most complicated parts that we're going to cover in this video, but it is really important that everything in here is functioning the way it should. So we're going to start with the intake side with this really gross rag. Might want to not touch my face. We have this intake boot right here. Wow, I can't think. And you just want to go around and check for any kind of tears or any kind of problems with it, any breaks or dry rot, and looks like this one looks okay. Oh, nope, right there. Can you see that at all? See those big cuts right along there where it's kind of breaking? Mm-hmm. I don't know how well the camera got that, but I can see it. And that's bad because if any more air gets sucked in through there that isn't being metered by the carburetor, then you're going to have all kinds of problems with it running lean and bogging out. It will be toasted. So moving on to the exhaust side, we of course have the stud right here that has a nut that screws on and off. Just make sure that moves freely, and then of course the bolt on this side, make sure that moves freely. Another rag that looks like it, I don't even want to know. We've got a gasket right here that we want to take a look at. Ooh, crunchy. Of course I can see right away we've got a big gouge in it right there, and this one's going to need to be replaced. But that's okay. They come in every top-end kit. You'll be able to find them all over the place. Top-end kits are cheap, and most of them are the same. You don't really have to worry about any kind of quality issues. Okay, so now we have this water jacket here, which we can open up and take a look. There's a gasket in here, and there's a couple other components that need to be checked. Mainly the O-ring, but because if you get water leaking out of here, you can start losing coolant, and that's bad. So you want to just take a look in here, some kind of sparkly. Blech. Gross. So this is the O-ring. It's in pretty rough shape. It could probably be reused. There's no giant cuts or tears, but most of them come in gasket kits for these bikes, so I'll probably end up replacing it anyway. Now we can move on to the actual valve train. And,
Oh, where did those come from?
I don't know, but I don't really want to know. So, moving on to the actual valve train. This is where it really pays to stay organized, because we've got a lot of valves that are very different. Two exhaust valves are the same, but they wear differently into their seats just because no metal is perfect. And the left and right intake valves are the same part number wise, but again, they wear into their seats differently. And the middle intake valve is actually a different part number entirely. So you have to be very careful not to mix any of them up, or you'll have some serious problems. So the way that I do everything is I take a note card and I basically just label everything and draw some circles to show where the valve caps are, the buckets there, and then I just label it because it's good practice. Keep everything organized.
Just in case you don't remember which one has two.
Are you done?
Yeah. Oh, no, I have one more thing to say. Everything in the garage is oily, even the piece of paper.
Maybe your soul is oily.
I'm in the garage.
You basically just want to use a little stick magnet, and you can pull the cap off, and then
Blink.
underneath the cap is, well, you should inspect the cap first. You want to look for any kind of big wear scars or anything like that. This one looks okay. It moves up and down very fast. Sorry, you couldn't see that. Very fast, so you need to make sure that it didn't, scrape up from the sidewalls, and it's a harder metal than the aluminum head, so you need to be careful of that too. There we go. So this is the valve shim. It's what takes up space between the bucket here and the actual top of the valve, which is right there. You can sometimes, if they're new enough, you can actually read what number they are. This one I cannot. So we're going to take a digital micrometer. This one is a 1.75 millimeter shim. You want to also make sure that it still moves freely, that you're not, crushing it, because you'll get a bad number, a number that doesn't make any sense. So this is a 1.75, and I take that number and I'll write it right here, and that tells me what shim it is, and I just need to repeat the process for all the other valves, and we'll cut back to when I'm done with that. So I finished taking out the buckets. We've got all the shims marked here in their respective order. Of course, left and right exhausts, left, center, right intakes. And all that's recorded, which is going to be really important later when you're trying to get the valve clearances in spec to start the motorcycle. So the next part we need to get out is the spark plug, which is buried deep in that hole. Gotcha. Yeah, that's about what I expected. If you have a rusty spark plug, replace it. Don't be cheap. The end is also very black. I should probably get that out of the way. I don't know if you can see that very well. This is what the new spark plug looks like compared to the old one. You can see a lot of difference.
The box.
Oh, yes, and just for anybody who doesn't know, it's an NGK CR8E spark plug, which is what the manual calls for, and is what the bike should run. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is take out the valves so that we can verify that they aren't cupped and check the springs and all that stuff. So this is just a very cheap off of Amazon valve spring compressor tool. This is going to be a little bit hard to show on camera, but I'm going to do my best here. So basically what you want to do is get this cup end right onto the base of the valve, or actually the top of the valve, just like that, and then you're going to start tightening up this end so that you can be applying pressure on the actual valve itself. And then you're going to take this little rod and you're going to spin it so that you can compress the valve inside of its seats. If you hear any loud banging noises, don't be too scared. See, it's compressing the valve just like that. And you don't want to tighten it too much but that feels about good. And then you're going to come in here, and you're going to take, I'm going to use a smaller stick magnet because I can. It's just a little guy, and then right in here, we've got two little valve keepers in here. They look like that, and they sit around the, you see that okay?
Yeah, that's two put together,
light,
right?
Yeah, this is two of them. Did the light make it worse?
Doesn't matter.
So there they are. They sit around the valve inside their little section and keep the valve tight. So I'm going to put these keepers with their same valve, which is the left exhaust. I've got everything organized over here, and then you're going to relieve the pressure on the valve by turning it the opposite way. And that way everything will just fall out, just like that. And I'm just going to kind of loosen everything up, pull it off, and then as you can see the spring has already fallen out, and now you can just push on the valve and out it comes. So now that we've got the valve cleaned off, we're going to set it right here on the table, and what you're looking for is right on this lip. You can see there that this valve is cut at a very nice 45-degree angle, and this valve is good to go. And the reason that it's good to clean them off is I initially thought it was cupped, and I usually do, and when I cleaned it off, it was not. So that saves me, depending on which route you go, up to $70 a valve. So we're going to keep trucking. I'll let you know how each valve turns out, and we'll be back in a minute. So I thought since this was the last valve that I might show you how I clean them. I just do it on a wire wheel here, and I just turn it up all the way and use very light pressure. There you go. Cleaned up and ready to go. The last thing is we already showed you checking for cupped valve, and I just want to show you a video since this bike has sat for a long time. I just want to make sure that the valves aren't bent in any way. So what you do is you set it on a flat surface, and then you just spin it, and it should spin in a circle, and you shouldn't see any noticeable wobble in the actual stem. And this one's good, and so are all the others. So let's get back to taking stuff apart. Okay, so we've got all the valves out, and now we need to check the condition of the valve stem seals, which are also included in most top-end kits. And I'm just going to replace them anyway, so I don't really care if I destroy them, but I'm going to try really careful to get one out that's without destroying the seal to show what to look for since I don't have the gasket set with me. So I'm just going to use a set of needle nose pliers, and all the valve stem seals are right down inside here. And I'm just going to start with this one here, and I'm going to grab it, I'm going to spin it, I'm going to wiggle it, and I'm just going to try and, there it is. So these ones don't look that bad. On 450s, the intake ones will have brass around here with the seal fitted inside them, but the exhaust ones are just a little bit different, and they are complete gasket material. So these are very hard to get out without destroying. But again, I will do my very best. See, these are complete gasket material. These all look to be in really good shape. It's very rare for these to get really destroyed, but it's a item that wears, so it's just a good idea to replace them anyway. Every seal should be replaced, and that's what I'm going to do. So one tech tip, I always keep the old seals just in case I break one of the new ones or I malform it in any way. I'd rather do that than have to order an entire new set of seals. It's a lot cheaper, and they look to be in good condition, so I'm not super worried about it. There's one more piece inside of this head, and it is the seat for the valve, which I'm just going to stick my little magnet in here if it's small enough, which I don't think it is. So another option is to just take the head, turn it upside down, and kind of whack it a few times, and sometimes that gets them out and sometimes it doesn't. When I get them out, I'll cut the video back in. Oh my god. So I got all those plates out, and now everything in here is good to go. And you can take your finger and just run it around the inside of where the bucket sits, and you don't want to feel any kind of chunky bits or anything like that. And this one so far feels really good.
You have to get a new finger oily every single time.
So now we're moving on to the last piece of the puzzle here, which is the cylinder. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the tensioner here. And as you can see, somebody has decided that copper washers are necessary in places where they are not. So we just
Just
need
on
to,
one side?
just on one side.
Of course.
So the only thing that we need to do is loosen up these bolts, and this whole assembly will just fall right out. We might cut back in a minute. Oh my goodness. So this then just falls right out, and the gasket's really intact here, but good idea to replace those anyway. And then this bolt was already loose. And the only other major function of this that you should check for is using a small, very small screwdriver. Go in from the back here and twist it, and then it should hit a point where it stops. You should be able to let go and it'll stay in place. Just like that.
It's like a baby spaceship.
So, not a lot going on here. Pretty simple. That came out super smooth. Basically, the only thing that you need to check for here is you can check like the roundness of everything and how like you can check it scientifically, or you can check it how everybody does anyway. See these scratches here?
Yeah.
They're all, I can't feel them with my fingernail.
Huh.
And so you can't actually detect them. It's on both sides, and this is of course where the piston goes up and down, and you know, I can't feel them with my fingernail. And then what else you want to do is, the piston doesn't come all the way to the top, and so you just want to feel for a lip right here at the top, and I feel the slightest little lip in there, but certainly nothing that's horrible. So
It's
this
not toasted?
Not toasted. So this cylinder, after a good rehone, will be ready to go, and that will be all in the rebuilding process. Okay, so that's everything that has to do with the top end. That's my assessment and how I go through everything and check it and determine what I need to make for my parts list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and in the next video we'll be assessing the bottom end to continue our bucket bike series. Thanks for watching.